Welcome back to Comic Dudes with Attitudes, a podcast about comic books and some light disagreements from time to time between my co-host and I. This episode comes out on Memorial Day. I know we've typically done special episodes for some holidays and months of remembrance. This time we're not doing that. We're just gonna have an Invincible episode. We haven't done our May Invincible episode yet. We got to get this thing in before the calendar turns to June. So this week it's volume 9 and 10 of Invincible. This is part 5 of the great Invincible reread with Matt and Dave. You want to get into it? You want me to get into it?
I'd love for you to get into it. There's so much that happened. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot. So we'll start with volume 9. We'll start there. There is there is a lot. I've mentioned in the last episode that I'm not super stoked on young Oliver in this comic, but I honestly, both of these volumes, we get a lot of young Oliver. If you forgot, Oliver is the love child of Mark's dad, Nolan, and a bug-like creature from another planet, who Debbie, Nolan's, I guess, ex-wife, though they've never been divorced, is now raising as her own son. I guess maybe we should recap a little bit more of volumes 7 and 8, perhaps. We had Angstrom Levy in 7 and 8. We had Mark end his relationship with his girlfriend, Amber.
Yep.
And he found out that Eve has feelings for him. What else happened in volume 7 and 8 that was noteworthy heading into this one? We had the Reanimen stuff with D.A. Sinclair, right? Was that 7 and 8?
Yeah, the Reanimen stuff with D.A. Sinclair was in there. It was really like that relationship was the ending of the relationship was pretty big. Let me see. That whole the whole thing with the Lizard League and the nuclear silo and everyone, a lot of people getting killed off, that we kind of revisit that in this volume. That was in, I think, volume 8.
Yeah, Robot's origin. You found out Robot cloned Rex to have a body and all this stuff with the Muller twins. He gets his dad's books.
Yep.
About the Viltrumite weaknesses. The Lizard League stuff was pretty big. That was a few issues worth of stuff. I think those are the broad strokes from 7 and 8. That's where we're at.
I think Alan being back in the picture too was a big one. Alan the alien, because he was kind of out. But other than that, I think that was everything.
Yeah. So the volume 9 starts with Mark encountering the Giant. It's what this villain calls himself, and he wants to take over the world. And I don't think we really need to spend a ton of time on this. I took a note on this primarily because this is really the first time you start to see Mark flash a skill set that he develops a lot deeper later in the comic, where he's using his brain to solve these problems. He's not just flying in and absolutely pummeling something with his fists. Yeah. He starts to talk to the Giant about what he wants. He tries to defuse the situation, and then he gets called away, and the Guardians show up to take care of it. And he says, "Hey, go easy on him. He's definitely not all there." And turns out that it's an 8-year-old boy that was turned into a giant by getting sucked into some other dimension, which is why it sounded like he was not all there, because he's literally a child. So I think that's noteworthy because of the path that Mark is on in terms of growing into a young adult, and really what he does more and more throughout the comic, which is using his brain and maybe his natural instincts to read people and read a situation to figure some of these conflicts out, which I think is one of the cooler things about this superhero comic. Also, you get sorry, we're going to talk about that. I'll pause.
Yeah, I think I believe it was one of the first 2 issues, but they're setting up the government setting up a defense perimeter around the planet now, and there is a conflict with Alan is coming back into the picture. Alan the alien is coming back into the picture, and Immortal intercepts. They have a battle. Is that, am I too far ahead? Like they
Yeah, I
have.
think you're way far ahead.
Okay, I'll shut
When
up then.
Alan fights Immortal,
Yeah.
yeah, that's further along.
Okay, go ahead. I'll shut up. That was just
So
it was a situation of Mark using his brain to diffuse a situation. But go ahead.
yes, yes. So another thing that happens at the end of the first issue in Volume 9, that's the scene when you find out Oliver has powers. And
Yeah.
he like just he flies up in the air. Him and Mark are playing catch in their backyard. And he flies up into the air and catches the ball and says he wants to surprise Mark that he got his powers. And this is the beginning of the Oliver that I hate. It's the start of a dark time in the comic for me. I cannot stand young Oliver. He's the
Kind of.
worst.
Yeah. The, young Oliver kind of has some. Well, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later, but his thought process is very Omni-Man-ish, evil Omni-Man-ish. But we'll get there later. So a lot to talk
We will.
about.
We will. So there's also in Volume 9, there's a recurring conflict for Mark, and just it's really about balancing his personal life and being a superhero and uh, not doing very well in college. He basically just goes out and says like, I'm not good at this. Like I don't care about it. I don't want to do it. Like I'm sucking. My grades are bad. I can absolutely relate to that as a 2-time college dropout myself. That's there's so many parallels that I see in Mark like to my life. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why I gravitate to this comic so fiercely. But I just wanted to call that out. That kind of carries through to the end of Volume 9, and I think even into to Volume 10. With Mark not really just he's not given college his full attention.
I mean, when you have superpowers, much like you and Mark Grayson do, you don't need college, though. No, but like seriously,
my
like if you're
my only
super,
superpower was playing in a band and wanting to chase girls, but
well, I mean, no, you have incredible drive, especially in regards to your work. You're very passionate about your work, and like, I
I
mean, if you're
appreciate
super,
that. But
no, if you're super talented at something, and like you don't need college, like everyone does not.
true.
I'm going off on a whole different rant. It's just this is me. I'm literally doing academic actions, suspending students that are spending way too much money to go to college when they have other passions that they would be much better in. It's like you don't have to go to college, and the same thing parallels with Mark. He knows he's
Are
going
you
to be a
like
superhero. What's up?
you're? It sounds to me like you're laying kids off from the college.
I'm not laying them off, but
You
when
give
they
them the
want to
pink
lay
slip. Like you got other passions. Like don't worry about this. Come on, kid. Go right off into the sunset and go.
the
Buy and sell
institution,
Pokemon cards on the secondary market.
the institution I work at is $70,000 a year. This is not a school to come find yourself at. I've said that line a lot to some students. Like,
Damn, that's brutal.
yes, exactly. That's why I am
That
the
is
way I am.
brutal.
What?
That's brutal. Like that's just a brutal thing to hear. Is like a 19, 20-year-old kid. Like you're basically telling them like, hey, why don't you go figure this shit out in community college and talk to me in 2 years if you could transfer.
Just gonna say I don't hate young Oliver. Maybe I don't hate him as much as you do. That's all I want to say. I might have a
We'll
little
get
omni.
more about why I hate him in Volume 10, but
Yeah. Sorry, I derailed, sidetracked us.
no. That was good. That was a good sidetrack. I only have a few more notes on Volume 9. If you want, I can finish my notes,
Yeah,
or
I
you
mean, I
can
just have.
interject a little bit because mine are really mine are sort of at the end now. There's one more thing in the middle in the third issue when Mark has to save that giant cruise ship.
Yep.
He's eating lunch with his mom, and a
Yep.
Viltrumite shows up. Anissa shows up, who is a absolutely awful character. She is one of the most vile characters in this entire comic. I cannot stand Anissa. But she shows up basically saying like, you need to come talk to me now. Or I'm going to kill your mom, like right now, now, like she's dead. So
Yeah.
Mark was like,
It's
okay,
okay.
let's go. And this is basically saying like, hey, what have you done to prepare this world for Viltrum takeover? And he's like, nothing. I'm not. Yeah, not doing that. And there's some back and forth. She basically says, it's you do that or else. And then she's also trying to sell him on the idea of we're going to give them all this technology and their lives will be so great. He counters with things like, but you're going to just reap the planet of all of its usable resources and then basically everyone's going to die at the end. Don't you care about that? And she's like, yeah, of course they are, but no, I don't care. Like, we live for so long, like they're nothing. But while they're still alive, they'll have a paradise until the very end. And then while they're doing this back and forth, Cecil asks Mark to go help his cruise ship. He says, hey, if you're really serious about this not being a violent takeover, prove it. Come help me. This monster's attacking this ship. Do the right thing. Come help. And then she comes away with it going, you're not so bad. Like maybe you are a little more impressive than I expected. And then she jets off to a Viltrumite ship that's just outside of Earth's orbit, and a man whose name we don't know yet is waiting for her report back. We'll get more of him later, but she basically says, "Yeah, well, I got this. Like, we'll get him."
Yeah, she doesn't seem too bad. Like right now, you're like, oh, she's not that bad, but she does some really heinous and vile stuff. And I mean, my memory is not the best, but even I remember some of the
Yeah,
vile things she does later in the book.
yeah, yeah. I feel like we're kind of. This is another. I think it was our third Invincible episode where it felt like a lot of things happened, but nothing happened.
Yeah,
These two volumes
yeah,
are a lot like that. There's a ton of stuff going on, but I maybe it's just because I'm rereading it, but I'm feeling that I want more to happen because I know how much crazy stuff happens later in the
maybe.
book, and I'm getting him. Maybe I'm just impatient. I don't know, but I definitely I would I would like to hurry up and get on with it a little bit.
We probably are a little bit impatient just because we have read it before, but I feel like there'll be like 3 issues of like banger stuff, and then it slows down for like 2 issues, and then it'll
Yes.
ramp up and it'll slow down. Just for all that
Yes.
character building and stuff like that. So you got that. What about the next issue? I thought was a pretty big deal. Where Alan gets he pretends to get captured by the Viltrumites on that ship.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so Alan runs in. He has an altercation with Anissa, and she mentions something about him being executed. And he has like a battle with her, but like pretty much fakes his strength and allows himself to be captured so he can go back to be executed because he knows potentially that's where Nolan and Omni Man are.
Yep.
Is going to be executed on Viltrum.
This actually happened after the thing you want to talk about when he fights with Immortal when he shows up on Earth.
Yeah, this is after
Yeah.
that immortal thing is like a little bit earlier than that for sure. But
I
no,
think it happens at the same. It happens at the same time because after that diffuses, Mark and Alan go talk in Mark's dorm room.
I
Then
don't think so.
Alan scans the books, Nolan's books. That's when Mark tells Alan about how he was on that alien world with Nolan, and he tells him about Oliver, and he says that the Viltrumites captured Nolan and took him, which is why Alan lets himself get captured.
Correct.
Those things
It's,
happen
def-
like all at the same time. I thought.
it's definitely not. That was an issue 43. All that stuff you're talking about is 43. This is 45. This is two later.
Okay,
I take
all
notes
right.
issue by issue, so that's the only reason I know.
Fuck
But
me. What do I
yeah,
know?
no, just what I don't. We don't need to get into the weeds, but that's how I do it.
I'm
That's
glad. I'm glad you're meticulous because I
no,
am. I usually read like while I'm laying in bed, and I just
yeah,
put notes in my notes app, and
no, it's all
I'm a little
good.
more scattered.
No, it's all good. But like that was like the stuff you're talking about was the most recent time we saw Alan, and then like two issues pretty much go by. You don't see him, and the next you see him is that. So it was in relative quick succession there. But
Okay.
yeah, Alan allows himself to be captured, and he is in a jail cell. Well, on the ship, we then flash to Nolan, who's in a jail cell with another prisoner. And his bunkmate asks him, like, what is troubling you? What's troubling you, Nolan? And he's like, is it the fact that you're going to be executed? And he's like, no, it's not the fact that I'm going to be executed. It's the fact that I miss my wife. And I was like, whoa, like that's kind of a big deal. After all that ish he was talking about your cattle and you don't matter and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like he
Mm-hmm.
actually does miss his wife. He's a very complicated character, this Nolan. Like a very complicated. Um,
I think there's also like a kind of funny real world parallel to make here about like shitty men that go crawling back to good women, but I I do like Nolan, so I'm not going to take it there. That's my guy.
I,
I don't want to be too
I mean,
hard
I'm
on
not.
him.
I'm not going to be that deep, but I'm definitely going to say, well, maybe I'm a shitty man, whatever. But like, I feel like whenever you've been in a relationship with someone for a long time, like you definitely have good days and bad days,
Yeah,
and
of
at the
course.
end of the day, you miss that person. You wouldn't want anything
Yeah.
bad or horrible to happen to that person,
Yeah,
no
I'm
matter
just
how
making
much they might
jokes. I'm not
piss you
like
off.
I'm not trying to
No,
not writing a
I'm just saying.
dissertation over here. I'm just making a joke.
I don't know.
You
You
could just
kind of
laugh
are.
at the joke and move on. You don't have to.
No. You kind of are. You're relating Mark to your real world life. So let me do my dissertation. Give me my
All right.
flowers
All
for
right.
once. All right, all right.
Okay.
That was all.
All
That
right.
was all. I really wanted to talk about that, and then honestly, there was one issue at the end that like I really want to talk about, but I know we
Yeah,
have a
me
lot in
too.
between there, so
Yeah.
you can carry on that. I just wanted to talk about the Nolan
Well,
thing because Nolan's cool.
I think it's also really interesting that the way that Viltrumites handle imprisonment and execution. So when they took Nolan, he
Yeah,
was like beaten, bloody, broken,
yeah.
like in stasis, and they make
They
him
carted him
heal.
out. Yeah.
They will not execute a prisoner until they're at full strength. They want them at like 100% full strength, then we'll execute you. That's just such a that's a very
We'll
Viltrum
rehabilitate.
way of doing things. Like everything about what they do is just so brutal. I love it. I
Not that I'm
love
the
it.
biggest Star Trek guy, but it kind of reminds me of like Klingons. Like they're all about battle and honor and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like
I mean, I
kind
don't
of
know that, but I
similar.
yes, I
Yeah,
believe you.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's Klingons.
I'm not a
But
Star Trek guy, man. I'm not a Star Trek guy.
uh, I
I don't
dabble
really
in and
like Star
out, but
Trek. What do you want
I
me to do?
understand.
I don't like Star Trek.
It's all right. It's all right.
Sorry.
Uh,
The new movies are okay. The ones with what's his
Chris
name?
Pine,
Yeah,
Quintel,
yeah, I
and
like
Chris
those. They're
Pine.
like,
I do too.
huh?
I do too. I like those
Old Star
movies.
Trek. Like, I don't care.
That Phyllis.
I only have two more notes for Volume 9.
Okay,
So
go
there's
ahead.
probably stuff that I'm missing, and they're at the end. They're at the very end of the trade.
Okay,
So if you have more stuff in Volume 9, like you should talk about it.
I'm good. I don't. I should next time I'm going to break them by volumes. I just like read them issue by issue, so I don't even know. Go ahead.
Okay, so at the end of Volume 9,
Yep.
Mark and Oliver are having a conversation, and Oliver is asking about Nolan, their dad, and what he's read about him because for Oliver, his people, they remember every single thing that happens to them starting with birth. So even though he was only a few months old when he was taken to Earth with Mark, he remembers all of the good of Nolan. He remembers Nolan being a very great leader, a loving father. He cared for his mother. Everything about Nolan to Oliver and Oliver's memories are positive. He loves this man and he has nothing but good things to say and think about him. However, on Earth, everything that he has read about Omni Man is recency biased, and it's about him killing the Guardians of the Globe, beating his son almost to death on live TV, and then leaving the planet. And now on Earth, he's essentially, he's like a villain to the people of Earth, and Oliver sees that. Um, and Oliver, the way Oliver views the world, it's very unemotional and logical. He's
Spock.
he's
He's Spock.
Yeah, he's half Viltrum and half whatever his mom was, whatever insect creature his mom was, which I think we should mention because not everyone has read Invincible. Oliver looks like a regular human
boy.
boy, but he has purple skin. He doesn't have like
One
six legs
antennae.
and like bug eyes like an insect. Like his mom was an insect, but the Viltrum DNA is so powerful. He looks like a regular humanoid, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head. He just has light purple skin because his mom was a purple insect creature.
Good call.
It's
Good
probably worth noting.
clarification. Yeah, probably should note that. Good call.
I mean, talking about this dude for like 2 episodes, never mentioned
Agreed.
that he doesn't look like a freak. He's just a
Good.
normal kid with purple skin. Anyway, so while he's talking to Mark about these two very different men that he has now been exposed to, one that he knew intimately and one that he's read about on this new planet that he lives on, he says, from what I can tell, one of those versions of our father must be an act. And then he asks Mark which version Mark thinks is the real Nolan, to which Mark does not reply, but he definitely you can see the way that Ryan Otley draws his face on that. That he's very much conflicted about that question, but you don't get the answer. But I thought that was a rare Oliver W.
Well played.
And then the other thing, the DA Sinclair and the Reanimen, they come back. You get the reveal at the end of Volume 9 that Cecil has. We knew Cecil put this dude on the payroll, like we talked about in part 4 when he was in the jail cell and had no choice. It was like that or die, like whatever. So now we've got DA Sinclair's back with these stupid ass Reanimen. This is literally like one of the only things in this comic that I don't like are the Reanimen.
Really? When I saw the
Yeah,
Reanimen,
I
dude,
don't know why.
I don't know why when I saw that last panel with like the Reanimen with the USA flag, it reminded me of that shoot to kill in Iron Man 2 when he's at Flushing at the Stark Expo and they're doing the red, white, blue. They're playing that ACDC. Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know
That
exactly what you're
USA,
talking about.
US Patriot, shoot
Exactly what you're
to
talking about.
kill. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
No, you're
Oh,
good.
man.
You're good.
Yeah, D.A. Sinclair's back. Issue 10. Oh, boy. Okay. Okay. Trade 10.
So
Here we go.
volume 10 now.
Volume 10, man.
So doesn't volume 9 end on Doc Seismic being
Yes, the
back, or
doc
is that how
size.
volume 10 starts?
That was the Doc Seismic was that last issue where he thinks he won. The whole thing with Darkwing was kind of a big deal. We didn't really talk about that, but
Hold on. So did we skip over the Mark and Eve conversation in Mark's dorm room? Was that in volume 9? I think it was. In fact, I'm positive that it was.
Mark goes to Africa and visits Eve, and she doesn't want to talk
That's
about their
volume
relationship.
10. That's in
That's
volume
9.
10.
That's 9.
That's in 9 too.
That's 9, dude.
So
Because
their
they talk about
conversation in the dorm room is in
the
volume 9 too.
yeah, yeah,
So we should probably talk about that. That's important.
yeah,
Should I be talking about that?
yeah.
You
Talk
look like
about
you're
it because
deep in thought.
I'm just reading my notes because that was like Mark goes to Africa to visit Eve, so I'm trying to remember when their dorm room conversation is. Because
So Eve comes to the dorm room uh, while William is leaving, and she basically is there to talk to Mark about what's going on with them because they had talked about how Mark had broken up with Amber and they weren't sure what they were feeling about each other. And then while Eve is telling Mark how she feels, Mark's like, "Yeah, I mean, I have feelings for you too, and I knew that you had feelings for me." And she's like, "How did you know?" And he tells her about the Angstrom Levy thing, where the
yeah,
Guardians of the Future show up, and then future Eve tells Mark to let Eve know one way or another because she's been in love with him this whole time. And Eve has a very real and visceral reaction to that, which is, do you only feel this way because you feel bad for me or something? Or is it because future me told you that I liked you, so now you like me back? And then gets upset and leaves. She's like, I don't want to talk about this right now. Like, she was very, very upset about that.
yeah,
Rightfully so.
yeah. It's like exactly, yeah. That it doesn't matter. I don't want to mix up the conversations, but the Eve conversation, I think the one when they're in the dorm room that was like, and I bolded that to talk about it, but I didn't talk about it. Was like Eve was kind of Eve confessed that she kind of like wanted him to do this Africa trip to see if he would show up. Like if
Yes.
Mark showed up by himself, that means that like he really has feelings for her. But when he brought
Mm-hmm.
Amber, that kind of like dissuaded her, like upset her,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So that was like the first conversation. And I think this one is the second conversation they had about, yeah, like pretty much you're not in love with me for me, you're in love with me because you have your cable and you have information from the future or whatever, like that's not, you're not really in love with me, and that hurt.
I think the
Yeah.
lesson here is instead of giving people secret tests, you
Yeah.
should just tell them how you feel.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
What do I know?
No, that was I think I
So
think we
yeah,
should
so then
I think
go
we
ahead.
should talk about the whole thing with Darkwing really quick at the end of Trade 9, because that kind of sets up 10 with some of the stuff with Cecil
That
in
happens in
regards to.
10.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm positive.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it or you want me to?
Well, so I want to finish what sets up volume 10
Okay.
because while Mark is in Africa trying to talk to Eve, Cecil calls him back and Eve comes with him. And they're going to fight Doc Seismic underground because there's a bunch of monsters under his control and they've captured the Guardians and a bunch of other heroes. And they're in these little pods. And Mark and Eve show up and also get captured.
Yep.
The reason that I know that the Darkwing stuff happens volume 10 is because Astounding Wolfman is in volume 10. And the Darkwing stuff doesn't happen until after you find out Astounding Wolfman is making a guest appearance in this comic. And I love the Astounding Wolfman, which is another Robert Kirkman
I know.
comic. Fantastic.
I might have to dip into that series because you always had those trades or whatever, and I never read them. But
Yeah, you probably should. I mean, he crosses over with Invincible multiple times. Invincible shows up in his book too.
yeah.
Great story, great book.
So that's early volume 10 then, where Darkwing and the Reanimen show up to save the day, and they're captured in bubbles. And I mean, long story short, the Reanimen and Darkwing, they free them and all the heroes. There's a multiple teams like the New Guardians of the Globe, Invincible, Eve, whatever. They break free, they take down Doc Seismic. Um, Mark pretty much just like snaps at Darkwing because of what he did in Midnight City. He was pretty much just being like Dark Batman, like killing people that weren't brought to justice because the justice system was broken in Midnight City. So he was, taking the law into his own hands, and he was executing and killing people. And Mark
Well, not
like
just that.
asked
He was killing people that did anything, any law that was
yeah, like any
broken,
any
not like
any law that was
like
broken. Yeah,
jaywalk death.
yeah. So Mark's then like turns to the group and is just like, why aren't you guys reacting like this? Like you don't know about this? And long story short, you kind of you find out that everything got buried and this wasn't reported on, and Cecil was behind it, and Mark is like super upset and like takes off.
There's more than that.
That's what you're here
Darkwing
for.
shows up
Go.
with the Reanimen. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just Darkwing by himself.
Yeah, I said Reaniman.
That's a
Darkwing the Reaniman.
uh, yeah, but like Mark got
Oh,
just as
got you.
upset,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
more so,
yeah,
because of the
yeah,
Reanimen being. It's not just the
yeah,
Darkwing thing. Like
yeah,
the Reanimen thing was a huge deal for Mark. I mean,
yeah.
William almost died. Rick
Their
almost
mutual
died.
friend. Yeah,
Yeah, like
good
he was
call.
killing homeless people to make these Reanimen.
Yeah, and he ends up going and confronting Cecil back at the base, um, where then he sees like he's having a conversation with Cecil, like a little tested, heated conversation, and like to add another fuel to the fire, obviously, Da Sinclair like busts in the room and is trying to have a conversation, and like that's like another thing. Not only did you like take the Reaniman tech, like this is the guy. Like, what are we doing? So you're working with this guy, and then like Mark snaps again, and then like Cecil takes him into one of those white rooms. I don't know if we talked about it in depth in one of the other conversations, but it's a room where you pretty much can't see anything except the other person you're talking to. Everything's kind of blotted out. for us readers, just like a white page, and you see the two characters, and you see like the light turn on in the room, and like Mark is surrounded by these reanimen, and Cecil's like, "You're pretty much no use to me anymore. You're unhinged, and I got to take you out now." And that was a huge fight that happened. Uh, you Another thing, during the fight in the next issue, you find out that Cecil has pretty much installed a Suicide Squad thing in his ear, not straight up like a bomb to blow up his head, but a like ambient noise thing that is tuned to his ears, so it's like super irritating, and he just like buzzes this
It disrupts
buzzer.
his equilibrium, so he can't
Disru-
fly, focus, or do anything.
Yep. So he's like all unhinged there. He's like, I got to get away. So Mark flies off. I think Cecil catches him maybe once, but then Mark like really takes off. And you might remember he gets to the team base. That's all I know. And
Mhm.
Robot disables it. Um. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
few notable things happen that
Yep.
I think we skipped over. Uh, you get there's before Mark goes to talk to Cecil, he and Eve have a conversation, and like that's they kind of they solidify things. Or is it after that? I think it's after that. It's after that fight. Um, During their conversation, my bad. We'll get to that in a second. During their conversation, before they start
All right,
fighting,
fine.
when they're talking about Darkwing, and Mark's like, he's a murderer, literally killing people,
Literally.
and now you have him on the payroll. What are you doing? Cecil makes a pretty compelling argument, and he says to Mark, he's he's a kid that lost his way, and yes, what he was doing was wrong. But do you think he deserves to rot in jail forever because he made some mistakes? Have you forgotten that you killed Angstrom Levy, Mark? And
Yeah, that was a good one.
Mark defends it by saying that it's not the same thing, and depending on your thoughts and your stances here, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I think that one of the great things about Cecil's character is how he really just lives in the gray.
Yeah,
Like that's his.
that's a good
That's
point.
the only place that he
His
operates.
role.
There's nothing black and white to Cecil. The only thing that is black and white to Cecil is I have to do whatever I have to do to protect planet Earth, and I will do so by whatever means necessary. And anyone who crosses me, done. See you later. Um, Also, during that teleportation like chase where Mark's trying to get away from
Yeah,
the thing that makes the sound in his ear, and Cecil is like teleporting after him. So when he finally gets to the Guardians and tries to explain to them what's happening, I don't think they're at the team base. I'm pretty sure they're at the Guardians HQ in Utah
they
for
got
this.
booted. They got kicked out because that whole the
That's
whole they
after.
got.
No, this is after, because when Mark tells them what's going on, hey, this is what Cecil has done to me. After that whole thing gets fixed, Robot takes care of him. That's when everyone leaves the Guardians because they no longer trust Cecil. But Immortal, Shapesmith, Duplicate, and others stay, and they then Robot and the ones that quit go to the team base later in the trade.
Okay.
I got this on lock, except for that thing with Mark and Eve that I totally got out of order.
But go on with your
So,
thought.
though that was just filling in a little bit of detail. After that, that's when Mark goes back to his house, and Eve is there waiting with Debbie and Oliver. He shows up like bruised and beaten up, and everyone's very concerned. Mark tells them what's going on. And then at the end of that, Eve is outside. Mark kind of goes out and he thinks that she's maybe going to leave. She said she wouldn't leave without talking to him, and that's when they lock this thing in. There's a
Yeah,
kiss, and we have Mark and Eve, the couple, and they get some cool like Mark and Eve dating stuff that's also like superhero tinged a little bit, which I thought was really it was pretty cute.
Yeah, yeah.
I have more notes if you want.
Yeah, go with your notes
Unless
because
you
I
have
don't.
unless you have notes. I've
I
got a lot
have
of notes.
too many notes, but go ahead. I want to see if this goes into like issue the next issue because that was kind of a big one. But we'll see. We'll see where
So
your notes
I was
take
going to
us.
talk about I'm going to talk about Cecil's origin
I
because
didn't read that. Dang
We
it!
get the origin of
Ah, I
Cecil
should have read
Stedman.
it. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Read.
Why didn't
Go.
you read it?
Because I was like, I got to hit the issues. I was kind of I was running short on time. I was like, go back and read it, but I didn't have time. So,
Amateurish.
well, that's why my boy's gonna give me the. That's why you got to tell me the notes to the
So
test, man. You're gonna give me the answers to
you
the
get the
test.
origin of Cecil Stedman. It starts with him. He's captured by these two villains.
Yeah,
They're like the fist of something. I don't know. It doesn't matter what their names were, but they're
Kirkman
trying
makes
to
great
unleash
villains.
some poison cloud and like bring about some sort of global change by killing a bunch of people. Whatever, the same old stuff. Britt has to come and save the day because Cecil has gotten himself captured. These villains, they end up unleashing this poison gas. It kills them, and it almost kills Cecil. Britt saves him, and then after the fact, Cecil wakes up in the hospital. They've grafted new skin on his body. The only part of his skin that was salvageable was around the right corner of his mouth where he has that scar. And he says that he told them to leave that so he remembers the mistakes that he made so he doesn't repeat them again. But that was the only piece of skin on his body that
Dang.
was still left that
All right.
they could you know everything else had melted away. So you fast forward a little bit, and
Years
the
later.
Lizard League has broken into the Pentagon. Cecil is helping the current director of the Global Defense Agency escape, and that dude that Rex killed, that super big dude, I forget his name, kind of corners them. Cecil's about to shoot, and then those two villains show up and take out that member of the Lizard League, the two villains that quote unquote died in the beginning of the origin of Cecil. And of course, Cecil has a very visceral reaction to this. He's incensed that the director has now taken these two villains and turned them into weapons of the Global Defense Agency. And Cecil is like, "How could you do that? They killed 17 people. They were trying to take over the world. What are you doing?" The director says, "Hey man, I'm going to do whatever I got to do. And look, if I hadn't done that, we'd both be dead right now. They just saved our lives." Eventually, Cecil takes over as the director of the GDA, and you get the meeting of Nolan for the first time, and they interview Nolan right as he comes to Earth to like thwart some threat. Cecil says, "Hey, I can help you learn about Earth and integrate with these people. Let's go have a chat." So after they talk, uh, Donald comes to talk to Cecil, and Cecil says, "Well, so is he lying?" And Donald says he was lying about basically everything, about why he's here, about protecting Earth, about all of it. But we don't know what he's really here for. And Cecil says, I don't care. I'm going to use him for now, and we'll deal with it later. But for now, I'm going to manipulate the situation to my benefit, and he's going to help defend the planet. Um, Further proving that Cecil is a bitch.
I'd make a deal with the devil himself if it meant the safety of this planet.
Exactly.
That's
And
my job. That's what I
he
do.
he's he's
Damn, I
doing
gotta
all of the
read that.
things that he was so upset at the previous director for. He's making all
Yeah,
of the same mistakes. He's manipulating and having these really awful people come and work for him. It's just a really interesting little aside in the middle of the trade that I really appreciated.
great synopsis. I'm definitely reading that now. I was
I don't think you
it was
have to. I gave you all the high
that was like
points.
that was like an audio. It was like that those books in kindergarten where they'd read and they just show you panels. I was just following you what you were saying. Next
I'm glad
slide,
you
and they
got
just
some
ping,
enjoyment out of that.
ping. No one's on screen. Like it was just like the next thing.
Uh,
All right, so what? that the secret origin. Where are we at now? I just want to see where we're at.
The only other things I really have
You're
of
good.
note to talk about, there's some Oliver stuff
All right, 51. Yep.
and a return.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, we're almost like to the end, so I mean, issue 51 was where like Mark teaches Oliver. Mark is teaching Oliver to control his powers a little bit. They visit Art's costume shop, and much
Mhm.
to their excitement, Oliver has a costume. It's like a, I mean, it's kind of like a Robinish costume, but it has an O on it, and
It's such an
he,
ugly costume,
it's
dude.
such an
It
ugly costume.
sucks.
Like Google Oliver costume Invincible or something, but he wants to be called Kid Omni
You gotta
Man.
Google Kid Omni Man.
Kid Omni Man. Google Kid Omni Man, and he wants to be called
Terrible.
obviously Kid Omni Man. And Mark is like, yeah, you can't have that name, and that kind of brings up that discussion you were talking about earlier about Omni Man.
Yeah.
That name, like to Oliver, that's a big deal. Like to him, Mark is understanding the
He's
context of
honoring
this
his
planet.
father. That's it. Oliver
He's
thinks
on,
he's
yeah.
honoring his father.
He's honoring his father. Doesn't he even say something about like I want to right his wrongs or something, like his
Yes.
perceived wrong or something. I want to correct
Yeah.
his, his name or
Yeah. I mean,
whatever. Uh,
I guess it's a very altruistic thing to
yes,
want to do. I think it is another rare Oliver W.
yeah.
However misguided it may
Oliver's
be.
got W. He's got W's, man. He's dropping bars. He's
Older Oliver's a lot cooler than this one, I'll tell you that.
why why is I feel like Oliver can have like a more articulate argument than Mark can. I don't know. Maybe it's that advanced age. He's very well thought
It's because
out. I guess
he's half Viltrumite and half
he,
insectoid.
he's a Vulcan, man. He's
He's
like
not
half
human.
Vulcan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a human. I mean, that's he says that. He's like, there's one conversation they have in Volume 10 where he says, "Mark, I'm not a human. I don't care about
Yeah.
these people. I don't relate to them.
Yep.
I'm not one of them." And he's
Yeah.
right. He still sucks though.
Yeah. I love how passionate you get about Oliver. But
Nolan wasn't a human, and he related pretty well to a lot of humans. He had some really strong relationships. He had a lover, a son. He had friends. He had peers. Nolan could do it. Why can't you, Oliver?
we're
Idiot.
gonna have to have like another like hot take. We need a comic fights why Oliver's the best. Pen that, save that. We got that on the record. Um,
I ain't doing that.
Invincible gets a new costume. This is that issue, I
He
believe, as well
does.
too. When they visit Art,
Also an
it's like a
ugly
blue and black.
costume. I hate it. I
I feel
hate
like
this. I hate this costume.
I don't. I feel like this must have been when I started collecting the single issues, because like that was I've read this from the beginning, but I feel like that's when I started getting the single issues because there's a lot of that costume on the single issues I have. Um,
The
but we need to
black, blue,
prep.
and yellow is iconic.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's epic. Um, but meanwhile, in Wyoming, the Mauler twins are taking over a nuclear silo, and this is big. This is that same nuclear silo that the Lizard League tried to take over. Uh,
Not a good place to work.
Not a good place to work at all. Um, Later in that issue, I don't know, you probably have more context for this, but like Mark goes back after the whole like escapade with Oliver. Mark goes back to the balcony, uh, and E flies there, and they talk about their respective days. Um, they share a kiss, but more importantly, towards the end of that conversation, you see like a little floating orb, like a little floating eye thing that is spying and watching their conversation.
Mhm.
And who does that belong to, Dave?
We'll find out at the end
All right,
because
we'll
there's more
find out at
spying
the
that
end.
happens at the end of Volume 10.
There is some more spying that happens. All right, issue 52. Um,
Is this the Mauler
Mark,
twins?
this is the Muller twin issue. So
Okay.
Mark wakes up. He learns from his mother that the Muller twins are taking over a nuclear silo in Wyoming. He flies to this with Oliver. They both go. The I can't remember the exact plot, but the Muller twins they're trying to detonate a nuclear weapon into space. I think something about them
Yeah,
being
I
able to
mean
control
it doesn't
economy.
matter.
If they're going to launch it into the sun, it's going to cause this solar flare, and they'll be able to control not economies or like governments or something like that. So Mark goes up to
It's going to
space.
take down all of global communications, so they
Yes,
won't
that's what
rule
it
the
is.
world, but they will control it.
they'll control it. So like Mark flies up to space to stop this nuclear weapon from detonating into the sun. I believe it detonates anyway,
Hmm.
but not in the
Before
sun, so
this,
nothing's. Yep.
before this, when they get there and Mark sees that it's the Mahler twins, he tells Oliver to leave. He says, "These guys are serious business. This
Mm.
is too much for you. Fly away, and I will handle it." That's important because Oliver sucks and he doesn't
Boy,
listen.
was he wrong. Boy, was Invincible wrong in this case. So Mark flies up into space. Uh, Oliver's there, and he confronts one of the Mahler twins. And boy, does he confront one of the Mahler twins. He punches this dude so hard. We get the good Ryan Otley art that you will expect to see later in this series as it continues to progress. And by that, I mean, this is like brutal artwork, dude. Like, bust this dude's jaw clear off, bloody, stuff is
Just
everywhere,
flopping
uh,
around.
flopping around, like just gross, disgusting. Then is it the same guy, but he punches him so hard, like in the middle of his chest, like his chest explodes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, there's a gruesome battle with Oliver, and he kills both of these guys in horrific and brutal fashion. That you get every couple trades in an Invincible, you will get some scenes like this, an Omni Man beatdown scene or something to that nature. Once again, I kind of want to give Oliver the W on this because him and Mark, when Mark gets back, they have a very interesting conversation. It pretty much, if you're a comic fan, it summarizes down to the whole Batman Joker thing. Like, why don't you just kill these guys? Because they keep doing all this craziness in your city, killing civilians. You say you care about these people so much, just eliminate the threat and be done with it. And that was just like a really I don't remember that in my first read through, but they just had that very compelling, like Oliver had a pretty compelling argument. And once again, Mark, I mean, his rationale doesn't he's not Mark needs a lawyer. He's not the best on defending his point of view. I'll say. But that was where I was at
What do
there.
you mean Mark's not the best at defending his point of view?
I feel I feel
He's
like
the hero.
he is,
He doesn't need to
but
have a point of view. His point of view is we're better than them and we don't stoop to their level and we don't kill. That is
says the guy
like
says the guy who
if
doesn't like
if
Superman.
you drill down a little bit deeper on what Mark is saying, there's so much more to it. It's not just, oh, we don't kill. It's about making the mature decision to not act on your emotions, to not make a rash decision, but to look at the problem holistically and be better. Superman still sucks.
I'm just
This ain't
picturing
Superman. This is a Superman comic.
when you say stuff like this, I'm just picturing these 26 long boxes that I'm gonna get.
It's never gonna happen.
All right, going to the next issue. That's a deep cut, fans.
Hold
You'll
on.
have to be fans of the
You
podcast for
you
that. But yeah,
you
go into your thoughts. Not
glossed
next issue.
over
Go
a
into your
very
thoughts.
important thing
I
that
always do,
happened.
dude. That's why you're the filler man. Fill it in. Fill us up.
So while Mark is dealing with this freaking missile or whatever out in space and trying to detonate
Yeah,
it, and
yeah.
Oliver is committing murder on planet Earth, uh, after the fight is over, Cecil Stedman shows up and is talking to Oliver, and he's saying, "Hey, it's okay. We'll get this cleaned up. You have nothing to worry about." And as he's on one knee with his hand on Oliver's shoulder, Mark shows up, and this this is one of those really satisfying, intense moments, and it wouldn't be as satisfying or intense without Ryan Otley drawing this comic book. But Mark swoops in, grabs Cecil by the neck, and puts him up against the wall, and he says very plainly and in no uncertain terms, "I told you if you ever spoke to my family again, I would kill you. Do not talk to Oliver." And then they leave. Dude, that reading that gave me chills, man. And that's why Mark is different than Superman, because little bitch boy Superman would never do something like that. Never, ever, ever.
I'm just seeing.
What are you doing?
I was just trying to find that page. Is all. Yeah.
Matt's flipping
Yep.
through the trade right now, audio
Yep.
listeners.
Yep, you're good. And the argument. Yep, yeah. I don't know.
There's some bug
Ooh,
flying around while this is killing me, dude. It's like flying into my face.
have you? He brings up the at the end of that issue. Mark, pretty much Oliver confronts Mark on some of their father's ideals and talking about human life and talking about the insignificance of it. And he's like the kind of
Mm-hmm.
bad side of Omni Man, saying that it's it's insignificant. Like, why do you care so much? And Mark pretty much is just like, you sound like our father. And Mark was like, or Oliver's like, is that necessarily a bad thing? Have you ever had those thoughts in your mind? And in the very Ryan Otley way, showing, Mark without really speaking, just showing Mark's face of just, kind of contemplativeness, just like panel, last panel, very small print sometimes. So Mark has had those thoughts, as you call him, little bitch boy
Yeah.
Superman would not have those thoughts, but Mark is a very complex character. And I
Yes.
think we're is that the next that's the next issue. Um
Well, so
going
one
to
more
53.
thing that about
Yep.
that, and Mark's like his struggle with maybe having some of those types of thoughts. Anissa also brings up to Mark in volume 9 a question about his anger.
That's what I
She
was
says,
going
"You felt
next.
it before, right? That anger. You know, we all have. Every Viltrumite has it. You know, you do." And he doesn't acknowledge it, but you see it start to manifest. You see it with the Darkwing and the Da Sinclair stuff. You see it when he snatches up Cecil at the end of the Mauler twins fight. There's some anger issue stuff brewing with Mark, and we're going to get more of that later, but this is where it starts. He's
Trade
going
number
through.
10.
Yeah.
Temper, Mr. Dre, Mr. NWA, Mr. Straight Outta Compton. Y'all better make way. He's got a guilty conscience, man. I'm telling you. There's a lot of Bill
Are those
Schmeier
Eminem
anger in this trade.
lyrics?
It is guilty conscience, dude. I was when he grabbed when he started doing all that stuff. I'm like, temper. I love that video. Sorry, that's a throwback right there.
uh, my last note on this is how the trade ends. So if you have more to talk about,
No, I had highlighted like Mark talks about the short term Viltrum temper that we were talking about. Um, uh, I'll let you wrap it up because like the last trade, it was a lot of conversations with Mark and Oliver and Mark talking about their like different points of view. And
mm-hmm,
I mean, the
mm-hmm.
last point I really got from that is like the acceptance at the end. Like Oliver's just like, I'm not one of you. I don't think like you. Like, I just hope you can understand that. And Oliver does kind of say like, I can agree with your point of view, which I appreciated. Once again, like one of those real conversations. Like we might not always agree on something, but like I can empathize and I understand your point of view. But like, please
Sure.
understand my point of view as well too. Like, I'm not one of you, so I'm not gonna think like you. So I thought that was cool. That was
So
like at
a
the
couple
very,
things to
very
point
end.
out.
He,
Uh, Mark quits working for the U.S. government and Cecil. We didn't
yeah,
specifically
we didn't even
call that
we didn't even
out.
talk about
He
that.
quit.
Like, yeah,
He quit. He
yeah,
quit. So
yeah,
there's some stuff that happens where Mark kind of he talks about how it's a bummer that he has to go out on patrol because before he could just hang out and read a book, and Cecil would call him when he had to go and do something. Now he has to look for trouble. He's got
be
his mom
active.
calling him about stuff when he has to go and do superheroing. Mark also drops out of college and he's going to move back home and train Oliver. So Mark's officially a college dropout, just like me. We're bros. And the last thing that happens, go ahead.
No, I'm just the professor that Mister. You're talking about me breaking 19-year-olds' hearts. I have seen professors give that Mister Varner talk of like I've seen an email like you failed. Don't even try. Don't show up. You're wasting your time and my time. I
Brutal,
highlighted that conversation, dude. Mr. Varner, dude.
brutal.
Don't
So
think I didn't
end
notice
of the
this chair
volume,
being filled.
end of the volume, and end of this episode.
Yep.
Mark and Oliver are talking. They're kind of making up after the Mahler twin stuff. There's a touching brotherly moment, and another
Yeah.
one of those little orbs is watching. This time you see who it is that's watching, and it's that MFer Angstrom Levy.
Dun dun dun.
He's back.
He's back. He's scarred, but
What is
he's
he
back.
doing? What are his plans? We'll find out in June when we read volumes 11 and 12. That'll be the halfway point of our year-long Invincible celebration where we reread the comic. So if you've liked this conversation, why don't you follow, like us, give us a review, whatever, all that social interaction stuff that helps out the podcast. Do that. Come back next month. We'll still be here. We'll also be back in 7 days with some other episode. I don't know what yet, but you'll find out in 7 days. That's it. This has been another fun episode of Comic Dudes with Attitudes. We hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, my name is Dave.
And I'm Matt.
Peace out.
Peace.